Welcome to the first day of Zentangle of Project Pack 2.
Hi, I'm Maria.
And I'm Rick. These are the materials we're going to use. We're going to start back at the very beginning.
Okay, so we're going to work on our original square white tile. But we're going to use a new version of our micron. This is called the PN, and it's the plastic nib micron. And it's a new kind of more durable, kind of different feel to the pen. We thought it would be a nice introduction for everybody.
But let's show you what we're going to take inspiration from.
Our first tile that we always teach, and the reason being is that crescent moon here we teach that because it teaches the whole theory of aura.
Auraing. And then the second tangle we teach is hollabaugh because it's a great example of drawing behind.
And then we usually have two other tangles, and one would be a grid tangle and one would be just a fun curvy tangle. These are usually the ones we use, but sometimes we bounce around with that.
And you can also see that we define the areas with a Z-shaped string. So we're going to do that exact thing, but in a different way.
Actually, not exactly. We're going to do the same tile, but with new eyes.
And we're going to use the same string, and we're going to use the same
border.
Well, we're going to use a border. We'll use the same string, and we'll use tangles that are inspired by these tangles. And so let's play along.
Okay.
Ready?
Let's go.
Okay,
this will be
let's
fun.
get started.
And we're going to do corner dots. We're going to do a border. And then we're going to do a Z-shaped string, but nothing like we've ever done it before. So we're going to go from the middle to the middle, and we're going to create our kind of a curvy Z here, and we're going to cut our tangle into 4 sections with a square in the middle.
And so Molly's going to do the first tangle, something like crescent moon.
Oh, not so crescent moon.
Not so crescent moon.
All right, so you notice that she actually made a very small corner dots or a small space in the middle with so much room for us to work out here. So I'm working outside in the frame here, and instead of putting half circles or ladybug shapes, I am playing with these sort of triangular or pointy little teepees here, and I am going all the way around just like I would normally with crescent moon, but the shape's a little bit different. And instead of filling it in with ink, solid ink, I have decided to do it a little bit differently and sort of just add these slightly rounded lines to fill the space. So just a little bit different, but the same idea. Once I sort of got all those spaces filled, I'm going to aura, just like I would normally with crescent moon, and just slowly working my way around each shape, putting an aura in there. And of course, because that original shape was pointed, the aura is also pointed. I'm just going to keep working my way around like I would normally, adding a second aura, just looking at each shape. And as you can see here, I've kind of run into a little bit of a roadblock and I had to go underneath. So I'm just really playing with each stroke as it comes along and seeing where I want to take it.
So you're going according to the rules of crescent moon, but it doesn't look anything like crescent moon.
Right, and the lines become more jagged and staticky and a little bit more, I guess, geometric perhaps.
Angular.
Yeah, and just having fun with how the auras kind of interact with each other. And now I'm going in the spaces that have kind of appeared from all this auraing.
So it's really cool. It's the same principle and the totally different effect. I love it.
I love this, Molly. So next up we have Nick Hollabaugh, who is going to do our next tangle.
So I'm going to jump in here and do one of my mini versions of hollabaugh that I like to do. I'm going to keep this one a little bit more curvy, a little bit more organic. I sort of thinking about this as roots on a tree.
A little flare out at the end there. I like that.
That's something new I've been trying.
So again, the whole Hollabaugh draw behind principle. And one of the things that I think is really cool about this is the similarity of the gap between the lines and the aura-ing that Molly did in her Not Quite Crescent Moon.
So Nick's going along with all our other stuff here. We're doing all the tangles on a classic first Zentangle tile, but doing it as differently as we can.
Yeah, and like tangling on the border instead of inside the border, right?
And when I'm doing these layers, I'm constantly watching to see, what kind of other shapes they're creating, what kind of negative shapes they're creating, and how I'm constantly thinking about how I will come back and fill those in as I go.
And so it's a little bit different than regular Hollabaugh. Instead of just having, 2 lines, parallel lines, he's adding a third and a fourth line, and then sometimes going back and forth to doing one line here and then going back so that it almost looks like they're intersecting through one another. Pretty fascinating approach here. Still just Hollabaugh.
Yeah, I like it when it gets to the point where, you're drawing one line here and one line there and do the rhythm that creates. And now I'll go back in and start to fill in some of the space in between. And I like to stop at some point and define some of these spaces.
And what's really neat about this is it's now creating this nice balance of light and dark. Instead of there being just these lines, there are now these really powerful spaces that give a great contrast.
And you can see that he's aura-ing inside the space and then coloring it in. So it still has another dimension besides for just coloring in.
One thing I love to see when Nick's drawing is he has this very deliberate approach to putting every line down. It's like this very controlled, I guess, just like, this is the line I'm putting down right now. It's the only line I need to worry about. And then he moves on to the next one. And I think that's kind of a very cool approach. There's no hesitation involved.
And it's obvious that it's a very artsy way of going about it. I like that.
Artsy?
Artsy.
Yeah, I tend to use a lot of big, dark areas, like fill in a lot of dark, negative spaces.
And kind of a cool approach, too. He's not coloring in the spaces, per se, but almost creating an aura first and then coloring in that shape, which is a pretty neat approach. And that ink really helps a lot.
So now Maria is doing...
Oh, and I'm doing a newer version of Printemps, which, again, is one of the tangles that we use on most first tiles that we teach. And I was trying to come up with something totally different than we've ever taught before. So I'm starting with a really big spiral in the middle.
Okay, and I just got to interrupt because look, when she comes around, she's pushing on the pen, and see how the line is a little thicker there? So she's waiting, and that's something you can really do with these PN pens.
Yes, these PNs are really cool. So after I figured out how I wanted to put down my Printemps, I'm going to go back and have some fun with these spaces in between, give it some contrast, some drama, and then I wanted to add some detail that I've never done before. So I'm going to go in and sort of fill a little bit of one of the stripes with these beautiful perfs that almost gives it looks like ball bearings or something like, right?
Yeah.
And then you don't have to go all the way around, because if you go all the way around, then you start going around again. So just enough to give it a kind of a quirky little, it reminds me of that machine in the circus where they turn all the things and it makes all the noise. What's a calliope or one of those kind of things? Sure, okay.
Okay, so I'm going to do a version of Bales, So you may have noticed that these are all the 4 tangles that we most often teach when we do a first tile in a class. And so Bales is a grid tangle, and I'm just laying down the grid here, and I'm using the last available space. And so basically this is a parallel lines and perpendicular lines, but you'll see I sort of play with, I'm pointing to the screen here, you can't see me pointing, but I'm making these lines fit with the other tangles that they're adjacent to sometimes. And once I have the grid all in there, I'm going to go in and actually begin this version of Bales by making floors. So a lot of the tangles we do sort of like overlap each other. So is this Bales? Is this floors?
Is it flails?
Or
Flails?
doors? I don't know. So
We have way too much fun with this.
so this is a version of our kitchen floor, which is what was
Might
what
be
the
a boorish
inspiration.
flail.
Yeah.
There we go. It's late. But now we're going to take a little bit of takeoff and land with those floors shape and put in the rice shape in between it. And I'm just going to do that on all of the intersections between those floors, and it now becomes a version of Bales. So I do it in one direction, and then I do it in the other direction, sort of mimicking the curve of that diamond that I used to define the floors tangle.
The PN pen is a little bit bolder than our 01. I think, is it an 05? Is it? It's a little bit bolder.
The line is
So
between
now
over
it's time to do some shading. So I'm going to turn this back over to Molly.
Okay, so I am going to start playing around with kind of a fun option here by defining the sort of contour line that's created from the points. And I'm going to first almost draw a line with my pencil and then pull out in one direction with the graphite. So I'm going to first just go pretty heavy-handed and lay down the graphite, and then go back with the tortillon and really blend it sort of down those lines. And as you can see, I did it all on the same side, so I'm sort of on the right side of these little valleys and leaving the other side unshaded, so it creates kind of this illusion. Kind of fun. I tend to put the graphite down a little bit heavy. I like that sort of sculptural feel and adding a little bit more dimension. And I like to keep that line that I first drew on that contour line really sharp. So I'm only fading it in one direction, but leaving the other side real sharp. And then I thought it would be a little fun to just sort of define that square in the middle. So I'm just adding like almost a little shadow there, using the point of my pencil to create a sharp dark line, and then the side of the pencil to create a fade. And then just kind of blending it a little bit with the tortillon.
That lifts it right off. It's really cool.
I love it.
Okay, so now let's get some shading on the hollabot. No, the shading on the printemps.
So I'm just going to shade a little bit of the perfs that I put in there, and then a side of them, just to give it some character. Not too much, because the tile is getting to be darker than normal. So I think I'm going to keep it pretty light. I like that.
Nice.
A little tortillon, a little swipe of the magic tortillon, and we're good to go.
That looks nice, Mom.
Oh, you know what? That white space, as beautiful as it was, it just needed something to invade there. And a little sprinkle.
I'm going to come in and shade Hollabaugh. I'm I'm just gonna look to add some three-dimensionality to the way the hollowball layers are. I typically just use a pencil. I never do a lot of shading with a tortillon.
I had to get used to that too. It's so funny. I used to use my fingers and all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just prefer to use the pencil. Every once in a while I'll use a tortillon, but
Well, it's amazing how much variation you can get just by the different pressure with the graphite. So you can actually get that effect of sort of blending just by the amount of weight you're pushing down on it.
I love that hollow ball.
So as I'm watching you put this shading in, when I was editing the video, I loved that you weren't just approaching it mechanically, like, okay, everything that goes under gets shading and everything that goes over doesn't get shading. And there's this lack of just mechanically doing it, but really sort of thoughtfully looking, okay, well, which one do I want to add that emphasis to? And I really appreciated that. And so I just wanted to point that out to everybody watching.
yeah, sometimes I just will shade some areas that I want to really drop back in space and then leave other ones without any shading at all. And I think your mind kind of fills in the blank from there.
It's a little more sophisticated than doing every single one.
So on this one, I'm going to, as a contrast, not shade any of that floors/bales, but I am going to put some shading around the center part to really lift that up off of the tile, and to sort of play with that and that space. Smooth it out there. And sort of play with all of the original elements, like Molly was saying. We take all the original elements and then just do something with them unexpected. And I'm sure there's some good metaphors in there as well. And I'm daring to leak into somebody else's tangle over here.
But it's a real exciting exercise to just see where you can go with this this same platform of a crescent moon, a hollowball, a grid tangle, and perhaps a little printemps. So have fun.
And we look forward to seeing what you do. Just if you're on the app, that's the hashtag, and you can just go on the app for free and see what everybody else has done.
Or post your tiles.
And we will see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye now.